Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Friday night Anahata live session. This evening, we decided to do something a little bit different and have a conversation with a local chiropractor, Jon Hicks, who, like us, is living in a different way and working in a different way during this outbreak of COVID. So I'm just going to give Jonathan a little bit of time to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about what he does.
So hi there. So yeah, thanks for having me tonight. Obviously, as Dawn said, I'm a chiropractor. I work at and own the Backworks clinic in Southend, some which some of you may know. As well as that, I've done work with closely with Southend United and Southend Rugby Club for the past 5-6 years now. Yeah, I'm originally from Essex and kind of came back here about 6 years ago, and this is where I'll be for a little while now. Thanks.
Thanks, Jonathan. And Daniel, do you want to say a bit about yourself?
Absolutely, yes. So those of you who all know me through my association of being a founder of Anahata Yoga Centre along with Dawn. But other than my role that I have at Anahata Yoga Centre, I work as a yoga therapist. And some of you might be familiar with what yoga therapy is. Some of you might not have heard of that before. But yoga therapy is using all of the different tools of the yoga practice to help support either an individual or a group of people who may have similar conditions, illnesses, or needs to be able to move maybe out of the space that they're in and move into a space that feels a little bit more comfortable for them. And I would say I very much enjoy working holistically with people, integrating their body, their breath and their mind together to create a sense of self or a sense of freedom within people. So that's really my intention behind the work that I do.
Thanks, Daniel. And for those of you that don't know me, my name's Dawn. I'm the co-owner of Anahata along with Daniel. I also own the Dawn Lister Therapy Centre, which is homed in Lee Broadway. And I'm a yoga teacher. With my main practice being mindfulness. So I'm a mindfulness practitioner. I also teach people to become mindfulness teachers. I'm a body worker and a counsellor. So my practice is quite integrative even. I work in a way that looks at each person as a whole. So within all of the various modalities I work within, there's generally something I can offer to support them when they're going through challenging times. And not even just when we're going through challenging times. I like to think about it as being a lifestyle choice. You know, it's not just about working on ourselves when things are hard. It's about working on ourselves all the time so that our quality of life is, you know, as good as it can be, and we get real enjoyment out of the things that we do, our relationships that we have, including the relationship we have with ourselves. And thinking about that, I'm sure a lot of that stuff's being really affected right now with the COVID and the lockdown situation that we're in. I know for me, it certainly affected me personally in some ways. I've struggled a little bit because I've been poorly. I had the virus early on and I've had a couple of relapses. And it's really thrown up a lot of stuff for me around my own personal habits around taking adequate rest. I'm notorious for being busy. I love being busy. It's my favorite thing in the world, being busy. There's always more things to do. There's always more things to learn about, or courses to go on, or people to see, or walks to be taken, or anything really that will keep me busy. The only time I'm really still is when I'm practicing mindfulness, which is usually for about an hour and a half a day. So that's really challenged me because it's put me on my back a few times because I've become quite exhausted. And because my immune system is really low. So I've really had to look at my own behaviours around why I like being so busy. I haven't quite worked it out yet. I'll tell you when I have worked it out, but it's really made me kind of look at myself and take some proper rest and nurture myself. And the good thing is I haven't felt guilty about it on the whole. I have rested and I have taken to bed when I needed to and let people look after me. And what's really been lovely is people have looked after me. You know, I've had people bring meals round and flowers and lots of lovely messages and little food parcels and on the whole, family have looked after me as well, when I've not annoyed them too much. So, you know, it's not been entirely a negative experience. I think even in these difficult times, we have opportunities to understand ourselves better, understand what makes us tick, understand ways of asking for help. If we're not somebody that asks for help very often, that can be quite challenging. I'm very much a doer and a helper, so to be on the back foot and be in that place of, can you help me? It hasn't been particularly fun, but we're getting there. So that's how it's affected me. What about you guys? Daniel, how has it affected you, this situation?
I have found this situation to be kind of equally really frustrating and really liberating at the same time. The frustrations have come through our business that Dawn and I own together, and having to change so much of it after we'd put so much effort into having it the way that we felt was facilitating us. And so that took a huge amount of effort, and I think I underestimated how much work it had took to be able to bring our classes from being in a studio to being online. So I was fine when I was working and I was busy, but then as soon as I stopped and started to slow down, I started to get really bad anxiety. I felt like I was going to have panic attacks a few times because I just was so kind of intensely in my kind of sympathetic nervous system. I was so overactivated and so kind of in the situation of doing that I hadn't really took time to step back and take care of myself. So for the last 3 weeks, I've really taken a huge step back, and I've really been enjoying some pleasures of just having a simple life. And I realized how busy and cluttered my life was with so much stuff to do that I'd actually forgotten to give myself time to be able to enjoy simple things in life. I've started running again, which was something I vowed I would never do beyond 5K, which was quite an interesting experience for me because I stopped running because I was getting pain in my hip and was getting some plantar fasciitis, and I decided to keep running. And interestingly, the problems that I was having have resolved themselves now. I actually think it was more to do with me not getting adequate rest, or I wasn't resting well. So I've kind of done the thing that I tell people not to do, which is push through it. but actually for me, there was a need to want to get out and move because I've been so stuck behind a computer for the whole month really to sort out our business and to make sure everything was running, that I felt like I had suddenly all this energy that I needed to expand and needed to let go of. So I've been running up and down the seafront like a madman. But actually for me, it's given me some time to just be able to stop. The most important thing that I think I've took from this is that I don't take my phone with me. I let myself be cut off from everything. Sometimes I don't even take my door key. I have to ask my partner to let me in after because I want to go and be free of every restraint that I've got. I just want to go and run. So for me, it's been really liberating to be able to go and do that. And then I come back and I just come and lie down. And I lie down for half an hour or 40 minutes. And I'd never give myself that time before, but it feels wonderful to do that. So actually for me, my yoga practice hasn't changed, but what I've had to do is add something really physical in, but then also something at the other end really nurturing, and it's bringing me back into a sense of feeling balanced again.
That's brilliant. That sounds really healthy, Daniel. Jonathan, how about you? How have you been affected by COVID?
So I think like the story is for kind of definitely for you two, for listening to you, but it's been a bit of a journey. I think initially from that initial kind of first week of panic to where we are now. Initially, I definitely kind of felt a very much sense of, I think a loss of purpose almost. Going from kind of working kind of 6 days a week, and even your mind's never switched off. In the other times when you're at home with the business to run, then going to actually kind of not being able to do the majority of what you do, and particularly being a chiropractor, which is very hands-on. Obviously, we can't. There is no way we can obviously kind of keep to social distancing, so we have to stop that completely. So it's definitely made me, I think from a practice point of view, definitely kind of we had to kind of reevaluate kind of the skills I've got and that I'm offering to people, which has been, I think, a positive thing in a lot of ways. There's been a lot of learning opportunity I've had for a lot of learning to kind of improve skills, can pick up new bits of knowledge on things that I wanted to do that just didn't have time to do, which is great. And I think as well as that, it's again going from having such a strict routine to then having no routine and being able to kind of, you choose what time you get up and what time you wake up in the morning. There's nothing to kind of push you to do that. So not having that kind of lack of routine and structure was really kind of, I think, a challenge initially. Definitely kind of getting, kind of trying to get that motivation to kind of do work and to kind of push yourself to do things. But in doing so, it's kind of, so having that time, it's helped me to kind of restructure things a little bit, and just using kind of a structure and a bit more of a schedule. That's going to really help me. But definitely, like I think, like Daniel was saying, looking at myself, it's kind of the first time in kind of 10 years or something that I've actually had such a long period of time being away from an office, kind of clinic environment. So it's actually kind of, you do sit down as much as you can and might think, actually, it would be nice not to work this much when you don't have to work that much in a certain scenario. You do start to kind of think of what really matters doesn't matter sometimes. So as much as I do love my job and love what I do, there's so much more to life that you kind of realise, really. I think positives and negatives there. But yeah, just definitely trying to see that kind of silver lining behind all this, and take the kind of opportunity that it gives, because it's never going to the first time that something like this has ever happened.
I know that when we've had conversations in the past, John, because John's my chiropractor, he's sorted me out many occasions when I've overworked myself and hurt myself. We always speak about the holistic approach, don't we? And one of the reasons I use you as a chiropractor and refer people to you so often is you never just lay someone down and crack them. There's always a look at their lifestyle factors that might have brought about the injury or the problem in the first place. And speaking about maintenance and how they can take care of themselves at home, at work, what else might be going on. There's that real look holistically at how one can look after themselves better. And I know Daniel and I speak about a lot about, people come into a yoga class and it's like that 1 hour in the week where it's all for them and they get time to nourish themselves, but then they go home and they burn themselves right back out again. And I kind of feel like, and we were all talking about this, we're being given an opportunity to almost reset. Like, does anybody want to say anything about that opportunity that's being offered, and how we could utilize this time, do you feel?
Yeah, I think it's looking purely kind of from my point with patients, it's kind of looking at it quite simply in that way, that any kind of people that I've kind of rang up and spoken to over the past weeks, obviously people that may come in may have kind of chronic conditions, or may come into that kind of regular maintenance treatment in clinic. Although it's always been, as you say, very much focused on what are you doing to self-manage this outside of here, as much as perhaps having a bit more time to kind of look after themselves, it's also been a bit more of a kind of a driving force where you can't come in to see a chiropractor. So you've really got to kind of really focus on that aspect a little bit, which I think has been, the people that I've spoken to, really kind of positive, and actually kind of found, actually this has been really kind of quite nice. I can get up in the morning and do my stretches and actually have time to, and don't feel rushed to do that. And I think you were saying, kind of, Daniel, about your kind of your foot with that kind of running injury as well. And it's kind of recovery for it as well, isn't it? But I think sometimes people think of recovery as just with that kind of sport, with the exercise they were doing, not the running around doing everything you're doing on a day-to-day basis as well, which sometimes we forget is still actually putting our bodies through a lot of stress as well.
And is there sort of common themes that you're seeing, or hearing rather than seeing, from people that you're speaking to during this lockdown period, John?
Definitely a lot of different similar themes. One was the I mean, like myself, having more time to do DIY is fantastic, but also there's a lot of injuries with that, and I think they're kind of a lot of people try to do a little bit too much too quickly, and ended up aggravating old injuries or confessing themselves doing that. But as well as that, you've obviously now got a lot of people that are desk-based workers up in commuters, our area, obviously up in London. You're taking out that commute and they're just getting up, they're waking up, they're going straight to the desk, or not even necessarily a desk in this situation. It's taking
probably the kitchen table, yeah.
on a good day, other times
Exactly.
sitting on a sofa using your laptop, sometimes even lying down with your laptop on your chest. Not
Guilty.
So what about you, Daniel? What do you feel like if you were to consider how people might be looking after themselves in this time? What could be advantageous? What's the advice you're giving? Because I know you're still seeing some clients.
Yeah. I mean, I've been fortunate to be able to see or keep a book of clients who I'd had a very long-standing relationship with, and therefore the transfer online was a relatively easy transfer. Although some aspects of yoga therapy are quite difficult to do online. You
just froze there for a second, Daniel. You just got to transfer online.
Has that come back?
Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah. So the transfer of information sometimes, specifically around maybe someone's breathing habits, which is a huge part of the yoga therapy models, is to look at how someone's breathing and then how the breath is then affecting their energy or using it as a way to manage pain, for example. And to be able to see someone breathe on a Zoom call is quite challenging. You've got to set the camera up, so maybe if you want to see their belly, if it's rising and falling, you have to have it set up in the right place. So that's been quite challenging. So I've had to adapt how I'm working with people. But I would definitely say the theme that I have seen running through all of the clients, and this may be reflective of the people that I see and the specialism that I have, but a huge amount of anxiety. A huge amount of anxiety. A lot of people having anxiety being triggered from past experiences as well. So forms of post-traumatic stress disorder coming up for people. And the most simple and basic things that I've been telling people to do is just revisit breathing again. Just go back to what it feels like to bring your hands onto your belly and to breathe into the lower part of your lungs and activate the diaphragm. And by doing that, it gives people something to be able to do when they feel helpless in those situations. And I think what's really useful is like you've said, Dawn, we're currently in a situation whereby this is unique to every single person. And we've got opportunities to maybe take some time out of our day. So maybe the commute that we were doing each day might have been an hour up to London and back. So you're gaining 2 hours extra that actually, rather than filling it with work or, spending time distracting ourselves, which we're all very good at, is maybe use some of that time to learn something new. And there's so many amazing things that are available online. I mean, they are online. We can't do them in person, but some amazing opportunities to learn new skills, to maybe learn some things about conditions or things that you've been coming to see therapists about, or maybe just learning something completely new that you never thought you'd have the opportunity to do. So that's the advice that I've kind of been giving to my clients. And also just knowing that you're there for them in this capacity is hugely rewarding, for me and for them as well, because having that connection and knowing there's someone that you can speak to who's outside of your four walls is, really powerful for people. What have you seen, Dawn?
I was just reflecting when you said about anxiety, and I would say the same thing. I'm getting a huge number of messages and calls from people that are really triggered, really anxious, and I've reflected personally that I've been very fortunate. I haven't felt anxious, but I have a very strong and long-term mindfulness practice. And what mindfulness teaches us in our mind and also experientially, so we understand it in our being, in our soul, is that everything is in a constant state of change. So there's no real clinging on to any one thing as being the thing that's going to make you feel safe, because everything's constantly shifting. So whilst it was a bit of a like, oh gosh, how are we going to manage this? It didn't throw me into a tailspin, because I'm very adept at flowing with change. So I've been able to draw personally upon those resources and share them with others through using simple meditation practices, just very simple breath practices being the best one actually, just to help them to understand the relationship between their current experience and what's passing through, how nothing's the same at in any 2 moments. You know, how you feel now isn't how you're going to feel in 5 minutes, in an hour, tomorrow. When someone says something to you or you read something, that's not an absolute truth. That's a version. That's their version. That's what you're hearing, and it's going through your filter. So, you know, using, you know, these mindfulness skills to stay grounded has seemed to be very helpful. So I've been sharing a lot of meditation practices, talking to people about staying present and not overly projecting, because, you know, that increases our anxiety, doesn't it? When we start thinking about, oh, maybe we'll be in lockdown in a month and maybe I won't have made any money, and then what am I going to do about that bill, and what about my nan who's really poorly? And then you start getting this racy heart and your breath gets shallow, and then you get anxious, and then you get a panic attack. Or you could choose to, you know, ground yourself through simple meditation practices, like something like the stop technique, where, you know, you stop and you take a breath and you observe what's around you. Maybe note 5 different things you can see, hear, smell and taste, or are aware of, and then proceed. You know, just something that breaks that pattern of panic that rises up. So yeah, I would agree. I think anxiety is by far the worst thing, although I've had several messages of people telling me they put their back out. So I've just been giving them simple stretches to do, you know, to release parts of their body depending on where they are, you know, like piriformis stretches and, you know, twists and things. But you have to be so careful, because I can't see them, and I can't really do a full assessment properly over the phone. I've passed over Jon's number to a few people when I've not been really sure. But I'm also encouraging them back to classes. You know, we are online. I know it's a pain, but let's, you know, who can just do it carefully. Jon, what do you, I want to come back to breath in a minute, but just thinking about classes generally, Jon, would you encourage people to be doing some classes? And do you have any thoughts around how they can keep themselves safe from your point of view?
Definitely. I think that's the biggest thing. I think I've been seeing people with, obviously, anyone with any kind of acute issues, acute musculoskeletal problems or back pain, for example. A lot of it is the kind of the apprehension about moving too much and actually kind of further exacerbate or making an injury worse. And that's fine. We always kind of have a chat with people and always kind of reassure them and hopefully can rule out any kind of red flags as such. But my advice is always keep mobile. That's the saying. Kind of someone always told me, motion is lotion. It's always the more we can get our body moving, it not just actually helps the muscles and the joints, but it also helps our apprehension, our anxiety about it. It's kind of subconsciously kind of showing that actually we can move more than we think we can, rather than going to move and then seizing up too much. But definitely what you're saying, doing obviously the yoga classes and other classes there's no harm. You know, do as much as you can, as long as any of those types of exercise, as long as you're carrying out slowly and controlled. You can stop if it gets too much, and that's the thing. Is just do the kind of any of those classes, and just there might be 1 or 2 kind of forms or exercises, positions that you can't do, but that's fine. You've still done the rest of the class, and you've still moved a lot more than if you hadn't done the class in the first place. So yeah, I definitely recommend it.
I was going to say something that I've noticed through doing online classes myself is it negates the competition in your head around being around other people and comparing yourself to other people. Because as much as you go to a yoga class or a Pilates class or any kind of keep fit class, anything like that at all, there's always some level of comparison to the person next to you, or, you know, the person in front of you or the person behind you. And I think by being online, there's only you and the tutor. And actually, most of our tutors, for example, they're purposely leading the class, but giving so many different variations of things, making it as safe or as challenging as you want to go within your scope. So it's actually giving people an opportunity to really let themselves tune in to what feels good and right for them, rather than being caught up in the momentum of the group, you know, sort of psyche that happens sometimes within a public class.
And you said something, John, in your conversation a second ago, where you said, you know, if people aren't moving, they do seize up. And could you just say a little bit more about that? Because I think that's really interesting. You know, often, you know, especially maybe some of the older generation, they've heard that story and got a bad back, go and lie on the floor for a week or something. And I often see people just too terrified to move. And, you know, could you just say a few more words about that? Because I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the advice of kind of, it used to be kind of previously, we're going back sort of 20, 30 years now, that when you had a bad back, the advice was to go home, lie in bed for 2 weeks, which we all know now there's been research, etc., everything out there that just advises that's the worst thing you could possibly do. The more we kind of stay still, it will kind of give our bodies an opportunity to sort of tense up, and our body's doing essentially what it perceives to be the best thing to protect us. Doing so, it will kind of prolong kind of a simple injury. Back pain is typically not anything serious. It's actually kind of more painful than it actually kind of than the severity of the injury is. And that's why I think a lot of people, particularly as we get older, sometimes we feel worse when we first wake up in the morning. We feel stiffer, we feel a bit creaky, and it takes, as most people kind of say, that it's only kind of once they've walked around a little bit, their joints or their hip or their back kind of start to feel a little bit looser.
You're talking about the early morning shuffle, aren't you?
Yeah.
That's me and Mark. We shuffle in the first 10 minutes.
But again, it's the same thing. It's being, you've been lying down inactive the whole night, so you're going to feel a little bit stiff. So my advice to people, definitely in that situations, there's stretches you can do before you leave the bed. You can drop your legs side to side, pull your knee to your chest. There's a variety of different simple stretches that you can do that. So it just makes it a little bit easier. And yeah, definitely. And
what would you guys say about the relationship of breath? I mean, I read this really interesting article a number of years ago by, he's a meditation teacher. I can't remember his name now, but he has suffered from chronic back pain, had done for years. And he just lay on his back one day because he was in excruciating pain, with his legs bent, knees resting together, hands on his belly. And he did his breathing practice, his breathing meditation for 40 minutes. And when he got up, he had no back pain at all. It'd completely gone. Because I'm not saying that's the cure for everybody, of course it's not, but for him, I think a lot of it had been around the anticipation and the fear. And so he took up that practice of every day just lying down, resting, and doing his breathing practice to relax him. And over quite a short period of time, his long-term condition seemed to just go. And so that became part of his ongoing practice in terms of keeping himself healthy. John, what would you say about the relationship with breath and our well-being from your point of view?
Definitely, I think breathing plays such an important role in a lot of things. I think there's two different ways you can look at it. There's one is the short term, when you're looking at like that kind of case when you've got someone in pain. The more anxiety kicks in, people tend to hyperventilate. You get really kind of short, sharp breathing breaths, which again is just kind of causing us to kind of all the muscles to contract. We're getting less oxygen into our system. Again, that kind of causes a lot of negative effects in our body as well. So that's kind of a short-term aspect, and trying to get people kind of to change that. You take really long, slow breaths. It allows the body to relax a little bit. It allows us to stop tensing up as much, which is why it can feel a bit more comfortable. But then people tend to move and the whole cycle starts again. So you've got to keep on trying to fight that cycle. Looking at it from a long-term point of view, breathing and posture come hand in hand as well. When you look at, I perhaps look at it a bit more simplistic way of looking at, you've either got chest breathers or stomach breathers. When you've got such poor posture, which includes that kind of rounding of your shoulders, dropping your head forward, which is going to be worse at the moment with everyone working on laptops. that actually it decreases the amount of actually oxygen and kind of breath you can actually intake. And then there's also been a lot of different kind of literature reading out that actually kind of says that kind of ties in closely with stress and anxiety. The worse your posture is, it affects your breathing, and that can have effect even on your kind of mental capacity, capability, how to actually kind of deal with scenarios, everyday situations.
Oh, that's interesting. Daniel, what would you say from a yoga therapist point of view about the relationship with breath and well-being?
Well, from the perspective of the yoga practices that yoga therapy is based around, ultimately our breath is a reflection of the state of our body and our mind. So if we are in pain, our default way of coping with that will be to be from an informed place of fear, therefore ending up breathing more in the chest, and as John suggested, having less oxygen in the body, and then obviously causing that whole sort of cacophony of different chemicals that get released to put us further into tension or put us further into a state of feeling we have to react in whatever way that we've learned how to react. So we as human beings have an opportunity to learn how to breathe. So when we're then faced with a situation that may cause us pain or may cause us discomfort or may be stressful for us or may be fearful for us in some way, and by having that breathing practice in your back pocket, because it's something that you do on a regular basis, when you start to come across a situation, and whether that is feeling physical pain or whether it's emotional pain that you're experiencing from a thought or something that's triggered something that's caused you to go into the stress response, you can use the breath to allow yourself to breathe through it. So you're not avoiding it. You're admitting, yeah, this is painful and this is uncomfortable and this is not a pleasant place to be. However, I know if I continue to breathe in this way, as John suggested, more down towards the diaphragm area, and I would suggest especially thinking about extending the exhalation more than the inhale, which triggers the parasympathetic side of our nervous system, so brings our heart rate down, increases our lung capacity. We then have the ability to be able to breathe through the situation. And clearly, you know, every time we're faced with something that causes us to feel upset or causes us pain, we have an opportunity to practice this. But what many of us do is go back into those coping mechanisms that we've learned, rather than knowing we have this capacity to be able to breathe with something. It won't take it away necessarily, but it will definitely change the relationship within your mind towards it. And that would, I would see that's a really, really powerful thing that we can do with our breath in a very simple way.
That's really helpful. And what you said about mind is, it just made me think, you know, that what happens in our mind shows up in our body. So if we think that it's going to be a problem or we feel afraid, then our body will release chemicals, hormones.
And we'll
exactly, so that we're ready. So for me, from my point of view, obviously being a mindfulness teacher, being my main practice, I'm always banging on about, you know, look inward, you know, don't worry too much. I mean, obviously don't ignore the outside world, but start with the inside world, with your inner environment, because if our inner environment is at peace and we have those strategies in place to look after ourselves, then our body's less likely to get all caught up in fight or flight. So, you know, everything's been stripped away from people that normally they would use to cope with difficult situations. They can't go down the pub, they can't go to the gym, they can't go out for dinner or whatever it is that they would normally do to make themselves feel better. They can't socialize with other people face to face. And let's not undervalue, even if you're a bit hermit-like myself, I love my own company. Being face to face and having that connection with others is so important. We are social human beings.
And also as well, the people that use activity to cope with that has also been reduced massively as well. So we can only go out for an hour a day.
Yeah.
So, you know, those that go running for hours or cycling for hours are having to consider, is that the right thing to be doing now? So all of the ways that we're coping as being hugely limited.
Yeah. So when we spoke about this earlier in the week, we spoke about the a pie chart. And I know that you use this, and I use it as well with my clients. I don't know, maybe you in some way do this, Jonathan, maybe verbally slightly, but we spoke about, you know, if you drew a pie chart and you looked at all the times you spent in your day, which, you know, how much of it is work, how much of it is family, how much of it is rest. I would say also how much is creativity and daydreaming time, how much is self-care time for you. Do you want to say, either if you want to say anything about you know, how one could fill in that pie chart in a way that would, you know, support us to get the best out of this time in a way that's going to be helpful to our well-being?
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, I don't use that specific technique, but definitely it's always kind of trying to, as you say, looking at the whole holistic picture of an issue. The biopsychosocial model is always kind of factoring in, you know, what else is going on in their life that could be contributing to an episode of pain or a back or spinal issue. But yeah, I mean, for me anyway, I can't. It's definitely, as you say, taking the opportunity to kind of, you know, pick up the guitar, and actually something that I've had kind of for years, but actually kind of got it out, dusted it off, and actually it's been quite nice actually kind of sort of tinker around with that a little bit, which I wouldn't normally have to do. And yeah, that's something kind of personally for me, and I think we can all probably find something that will kind of brings a little bit of joy and not work related.
What are you playing, John? Acoustic or electric?
I'm attempting to play acoustic. I don't know if it's called playing yet, but it's definitely doing something like that. I'm
going to give you a challenge to do a little song by the end of lockdown online.
Oh, no. Maybe a nursery rhyme. What's that?
Fine. That's fine.
That's more than I could do.
Oh, that'd be fun. What about you, Daniel? Is there anything you wanted to say?
What I've realised I've been neglecting is actually spending time with friends. I'm very good at spending time with people, but actually I've realised that I've been so engrossed for the last 2 years in work that I haven't been that present with friends. And what I've realised is, by being on Zoom, as much as I feel like a lot of my day is spent on it, it's quite nice because I can have, every Friday, me and my friends have a group chat all together. And it's the first time in years that we've all sat and actually properly talked, which sounds crazy. You know, we've been away for weekends together, but there's always been stuff to do when we've been away. Whereas actually we're just sitting here and just talking to each other. And that for me has been hugely, hugely rewarding. Because I didn't realise those relationships had been neglected a little bit, and I'm really, really grateful to have them back.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's so true. I hadn't even thought about that. I've been avoiding going on Zoom with people. I'll maybe try it myself. Being very even more antisocial than normal. I've got out all my paint stuff again, because I've always been a frustrated artist and always said, in another life I would have gone to art college, and I thought, well, what am I waiting for? I've got some time off. So the paints are there, the paper and pencils, and I've been doing lots of sketching and things. So it's really been really nurturing. That's what I feel really nurtured, that I've just had time to explore my creative self. And I would just say to everybody that, really take a moment. You don't have to draw a pie chart unless you're a pie chart type of person, but take a moment and think, where is the time for me in this day? Or every day, what do I do for myself that takes me out of my head, my thinking, my doing mode, the stuff that overstimulates us, that fires up the part of our brain that's, to do with creativity and rest and restore. And the word you used, John, was joyful. And I thought, that's a brilliant word. Why we're alive. Let's be joyful. Let's find the joy and the fun and the happiness. It's all like, there's a lot of sadness around, but aren't you guys just seeing so much loveliness as well? I mean, such
Absolutely.
neighbours talking to each other and people dropping stuff off. What have you guys been witnessing?
I mean, definitely I think a revival of perhaps more kind of intimate community spirit is something that I know for a lot of people, and for years it's sort of knowing your neighbours is something that perhaps most people don't, is something that's sort of died off a little bit. But actually, kind of, you're finding that I've actually kind of, going out there clapping for the NHS. It's kind of going at the opportunity on a Thursday night. You're actually like, oh, I've actually kind of seen for the first time that my neighbour across from me, and actually kind of smiled and said hi. And it's even just a little bit, that little connection is kind of quite nice to actually can bring up. So there are some things that I definitely hope will continue after this, and won't just kind of revert to that kind of busyness, kind of hustle and bustle of normal everyday life.
Yeah. What about you, Daniel? What have you noticed, if anything?
Yeah, I've noticed. I'm one of those people that will kind of say hello to a lot of people. Anyway, I'm not shy of saying hello to people, and I've noticed there's been a lot more hellos coming back. Whether I'm on my run or whether in the shops, people seem to have. There's some people who are kind of in that hyper stressed and fearful place because maybe they're out and they're uncomfortable being out, but actually there's been a courtesy between people, excuse me. I would say, I would say people have really kind of, that I've come across, have been very warm and welcoming. Something I was just going to add, Dawn, to what you were saying, about the pie chart idea. I work sometimes with clients, and especially with clients who are very busy. So, people that work up in the city and they've got kind of, their diary is managed to the moment, it's like every point of the day they've got something in it. And I say to them sometimes, you don't need to show me your diary, but where would you put your time for yourself in that diary? And maybe what is a useful thing to people to consider is, we make appointments to see everybody else, but how many times do we put appointments in to see ourselves? So that's a way that I work with clients, is say to them, I want you to put your lunch hour in every day. And I want you to agree with me that your lunch hour is going to be something that you do that is away from your computer and that is nurturing for you in some way. So even if it means going to M&S and then sitting on a park bench rather than sitting at your desk, you've given yourself something different to do. And I think, when we're faced with some people, this lockdown has created real complexities for people's lives. They're balancing children with work, with looking after maybe parents or caring for other people, and trying to look after yourself. It can feel quite overwhelming. So I think just setting yourself a little bit of time each day where you can just check in with you, and having that as a regular time each day is a really, really powerful thing. So I'd suggest put it in your diary, because it's probably the most important appointment that you can make, is the one with yourself.
God, yeah, that's so true. I think sometimes people forget that. I'm always saying this to clients: this is your life, you're living it, it's yours, you're seeing it through your lens, you're picking up the experience, you're feeling it, you're having the moment to moment experience of your life, so make it the best one you can. So I think so much of people's lives is given over to other people and other expectations and work and stress and family, and in the end, it's in the end it's just you. It is you. So enjoy it. Find ways to enjoy it and nurture yourself. Is there anything you guys would like to offer as a suggestion, just to sort of round things up, that you would sort of say, one gem of wisdom that you would like to share with people?
For me, I think perhaps that's, as a sort of a general, whether it be, and it will tie, I suppose, quite in answer to what you were saying, Daniel, is this, whether, if it's a particular thing you're doing, whether it's DIY, whether it's working, doing gardening, working at your desk for hours, is you've got to take that time every now and again to move. And I suppose that's kind of time for yourself in a sense. Is just actually kind of stop the task you're doing and walk away from it. Kind of, it doesn't even need to be for a long period of time, but that's just one simple way just kind of to look after your body. It's where repetition gets to us, and that's where it causes overstrain issues. So that's just one small thing I'd recommend.
Oh, thank you. What about you, Daniel?
Mine would just be about recognizing how well everyone's actually doing. I think we're very good to be really negative on ourselves and feel like, you know, this Instagram life that so many people are leading, oh, they're coping with this so well. Actually, everyone is on an emotional roller coaster. And I think just the ability to be kind to yourself and acknowledge that you can be kind to yourself. And if that means having to be kind to someone else first before you can be kind to yourself, then do that. But I think that for me is the most important thing. That's what's going to get us through this, is kindness to ourselves and kindness to each other.
Yeah, I really concur with that, Daniel. I was having this conversation with my children this week. I was saying the best way to feel good in yourself is to help others. And it's scientifically proven that when we help other people and we're kind to other people in thought and action, that our body releases oxytocin, the feel-good hormone, and we feel better. And that has an incredible effect on our physical, mental, and emotional well-being. So my advice would be very similar. Actually, I've got two. I'm going to sneak an extra one in. I would say help others and help yourself, and do something that makes you laugh. Watch some comedy or tell a joke, or just do anything that makes your belly laugh, because it can all just get a bit too heavy really sometimes, can't it? And you know, life's still ticking along. It's not as it was, but let's try and enjoy it while we can. So I just want to say thank you for joining us, John. It's been really nice to have a chat with you without having to have my neck cracked.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Although I will be back because it does need a little crack, so I'll come back after. It's been wonderful to join in. And if anybody wants to speak to John or go and see him at his clinic when we reopen, we're going to post up the details of his website, his phone number and his address. But he's in Southend on the big roundabout, so you can't really miss him. And he's always usually really busy, so get on the phone and get an appointment booked in.
I was going to say, if anyone's got any questions they want to ask, then feel free to put them in the feed of this Facebook post, and we'll be really happy to answer any of the questions after, or you can contact us directly through any of our channels. But it's been a real pleasure to chat with you, John. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Take care, everybody. Stay safe.
Bye, guys.